Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to, invite some of the luminaries as such of our industry and people who kind of addressing themselves to the challenge of multiplicities that exist in our country. Karthik, when he was presenting earlier today, he spoke about the fact that when you're looking at Deccan itself had multiple empires, and all of them have left a very enduring impact as such on the society there. So when we look at South, for example, we would imagine here in the North that it's fairly homogeneous, but actually there are multiplicities that sit there. And similarly, across the country, there are multiplicities that are both cultural, as also, of course, the social context or the life context of people of India, which kind of, allow us to, in a sense, address segments which are fairly sizable in themselves and address them in a manner which kind of, which requires us to be fairly unique in terms of the media that we're going to be choosing, in terms of the way they're going to be spoken to as such. So without any further ado, I'm going to be inviting Ramki, Ramakrishnan, or Ramki as he's better known as. He's the managing director South Asia for Worldpanel, Numerator. And let me get my specs on now. He's the business head, managing the changing client expectations, growth ambitions, and of course is managing the P&L for the business. He has been in this role since October 2015, managing the business across India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Ramki's expertise lies in consumer insights, mining, and resultant innovations. We also have Mr. Vishnu Shankar. Vishnu Shankar is the Chief Cluster Officer and TV, FTA, managing TV, FTA, and music, along with the programming, of course, for Z Enterprises. Vishnu brings over 2 decades of experience in the media and entertainment industry. He oversees a vibrant cluster of channels, including AND TV, Anmol TV, Big Magic, and Zing. Vishnu?
Thank you, Puneet. Hi, everybody. As it was meant to be a fireside chat, it was meant to be a panel discussion. But like all things, the person who was supposed to moderate chose not to come. So therefore, in the true spirit of AND, we made it a kind of a presentation for each one of us, and then we'll have a chat with questions. So what we're going to talk about is many Indias. I think some of our illustrious clients over here have been talking about it and practicing it for many years. But it never fails to amaze us, and it's always worth repeating on how we should look at many Indias the way we should be. So let me just talk you through some of the things that I want to be telling you. First, India is definitely a land of contraries, right? The same city has the largest slum and the world's most expensive private home, right? Economic boom, and on the other side, you also have poverty the way it is. We're steeped in tradition, but at the same time, we're embracing modernity. I mean, this is one of the best Ganeshas that I've seen, where it's a Spider-Man Ganesha. Largest pool of doctors, engineers, and then we still have 30% illiteracy. We're good at following complex software codes, but when it comes to following simple instructions like this, we are excellent at it. Where it says, if you can't read it at the back, it says, the board out there says, don't leave footwear here, and you find all the footwear there. So add to this the fact that we have some of the best data scientists in the world coming from India, and we don't have updated population data for 14 years. So we are a bundle of contraries, and we are actually proud of that, right? So in this bundle of contraries, what is the way that we have in terms of navigating this and finding some answers, and to see truly a spirit of AND, which is truly finding a solution much more than what we've been grappling for over the years. Data helps us do this. Let's look at some of these things. First lens, just the zonal lens, north, south, east, west kind of thing. There's such a uniqueness about each of these zones as we see from an FMCG lens. I'm sure the people following me will be speaking about healthcare and media. But from an FMCG lens, if you take the north zone, heaviest consumers of FMCG in the country, very high consumption. And they're also very big consumers of indulgent foods. I don't think it'll be a surprise to many of us, right? 42% of pasta, macaroni, salty snacks, and soft drinks are consumed in the north zone. You look at the west zone, the lowest consuming shoppers they are in terms of overall kilograms of FMCG. But if you look at it, the biggest buyers of staples, 37% of staples, which is tea, edible oils, wheat, together are bought in the west zone. You take a look at east, They're the most frequent shoppers, which means 185 times a year, which means what, once in 2 days they are buying FMCGs in the eastern zone. And also, they're the biggest consumers of niche grooming. 42% of face wash, conditioners, and oil-based liquid hair colors are getting consumed in the east. When you come to the south, this again may not be a surprise, which just says that most premium shoppers of the country come from the south, huge on hygiene products. So what this goes to say is this is one lens of looking at India, which is you go zonal wise and see if you can find a cut and where do you find your sets of opportunities. Let's look at a few more. So this is just I think it's a difficult graph for people at the back to see, but I'll just explain it in simple terms. There are two axes, obviously. The x-axis is prosperity, what we have called as the prosperity index. Prosperity index measured by multiple parameters such as state GDP, growth rate, per capita, all of those put together, and consumption of premium products. And what we have on the y-axis is what we're calling as the dynamic index, dynamism index, which is basically growth in prosperity. So prosperity and growth in prosperity. So if you plot the two, you get a bunch of states which we are coining as champion states, which is states like Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra, Gujarat, Maharashtra, also somewhere there. Then there are a bunch of states which are historically been very, very prosperous, but the growth is not there. They're calling them legacy states, Delhi, Punjab, Kerala, etc. Then you move to the left where the prosperity is less. Very often you would have heard the term Bimaru being used, right? Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and UP. The factor that is to be noticed is that the R is moved out of this and moved to the right. So Bimaru without the R is what you see on the left. And then there are some states which are emerging over there. So this is just one classification. Looking at a classification like this, you can map your own categories or your own businesses on these to see what is the difference that you're going to make when you look at India like this. Now, if you look at each of these states, obviously each of them has a different DNA, a different characteristic. So if you look at the champion states, clearly more than 64% are at least middle class and above, large dual income, small families. These are characteristics that this kind of tells you. So we saw the zonal cut. Now what we're seeing is this kind of a cut where we're breaking states by the nature of their behavior. Let's move on. This is one more way of looking at it. If you break down people into various classes, what we're referring to as the urban middle class. I mean, if you take the NCCS classification and you take the A1 and A1 plus as affluent, and you take, let's say, the A2, A3, and B households and put together and call them as the urban middle, right? This is urban middle class. They constitute 21% of India's houses, nearly 30% of the volume of FMCG, and 31% of the value, and they're growing at 4%. Now, the interesting thing is you can further cut it down as saying, what is this urban middle? They can be either from metros, or they can be from big cities other than the metros, and they can be from small towns other than the metros. They're all still urban, right? One would normally think that the metro middle would be the one that will be consuming the most and most prosperous in terms of consumption, but data says otherwise. Big city seems to be. So these are the kind of surprises that you can crop up when you break India and look at India into multiple ways in which you can break it and get data that is useful for you in terms of crafting your strategies. Now let's look at this category called super spenders. Okay, they're really, really big spenders. And when you look at them, there are about nearly 8 million of them in the country, 8 million households nearly. The number is this much. It is as big as some of the countries like Sweden, etc. So therefore, any way you break India, any cohort you look at, you will get a large number. So our task is truly in identifying the cohort that you want to go after and where you can unlock some growth. Another way to look at India, from a health perspective. This is about disease incidence. When I say disease, just take diabetes, blood pressure, and cardio diseases, the incidence of those. The green states are places where the incidence is low, the red ones are where it is higher, and the neutral are all white. So this can also tell you a way in which you can look at India, saying, how do I go after India? How do I go about cracking various states in India? And that gives you an idea of some of the health products that you see. You'll clearly see that the high disease incidence markets are where the health products sell more, which means we don't consume healthy products till we actually have a problem. That's the nature of how we behave. Okay. Now this is one more. We saw states, we saw zones, we saw various ways, and here's one pin code, one single pin code, which is Southwest Bangalore. This is the most premium cluster in India. Likewise, it is possible for us to determine the other opposite also and how we go after each one of those. Because today micro-marketing is at a level where we can go and action something at a pin code cluster or probably even less than that. So when you look at this, 227 rupees per kg. Take this kg as a composite of kg, liters, and everything put together among FMCG. So really, really, very large spending cluster. This is in Bangalore, and there, I mean, if you want to know what it is, it includes places like R.R. Nagar, Mysore Road, Kengeri, etc. That's the region that's the highest spenders. And you look at that, some of the chief characteristics that you see here is that personal hygiene is what they spend the most on. Now, let's look at it another way, where you see the size of the family. And if you look at nuclear families, the way it is distributed, clearly 69% of households in the south are nuclear, and that reflects in the way in terms of consumption of premium products and so on. But if you see the way consumption happens between a nuclear family and a joint family, despite a difference in the family size, they consume more or less the same, which means the more nuclearization happens, we are in for more consumption. So those are another angle to look at. So if you look at it from tea to thali, this thali is a Tamil word, which actually means Mangal Sutra. I learned from Tanishq that in India, every 75 kilometers, the shape and design of the Mangal Sutra changes. Every 75 kilometers, and you know the length and breadth of this country. Similarly, tea, I've just used one example. Almost every tea brand or every spice brand has a different blend for each state, despite being a national brand. So what we're saying is each state, each district, perhaps each pin code has its own flavor. Not just that, the same day is celebrated as different festivals in different markets. So we are clearly a land of multiple things. At the same time, we are a bundle of contraries. So fundamentally, it comes to the belief that there is really nothing called as the Indian consumer. If somebody says Indian consumer, go and tell them to take a walk, right? So many ways to take a break at this. Cut it the way you like, cut it the way your business needs to be, cut it the way your category needs, and from that you can unearth a whole bunch of opportunities. So with that, I think this India or marketing in India truly exemplifies the spirit of and, right? It's not choosing one over the other, but actually it's choosing I want this and that. And it's very easy for someone to say the market is down, growth is not there. It's important for us to break down and see in this kind of a market, where do I unearth the opportunities and drive that growth? So with that, I conclude my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there are two questions. The first one is, with regards to disease incidents, champion states have more incidents. Yeah. Could this be because of awareness and medical intervention being higher than consumption? Awareness and medical intervention is higher than the consumption of non-health foods.
Yeah, there are, it's an interesting question. There are two reasons for this. One is, definitely the champion states are more premium, so to that extent, the higher consumption of junk food, higher consumption of indulgent foods, which results in perhaps some level of health incidents. The second and probably the more practical factor is the fact that in the non-champion states, so to speak, the measurement itself is less, which means households do not frequently go and check whether they have diabetes or otherwise. The measurement itself is less, so that's the other reason. So both of these together contribute to that factor.
The second question is that there were really amazing geography-based insights that you spoke about.
I'm not able to hear you well.
Can you hear me now?
No, I think there's an echo kind of thing.
Okay. Is this better? Am I more audible now?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so you had a lot of geography-based insights in your presentation. But which cohorts are more of interest to marketers these days? We always know that mothers are of the most interest, especially for FMCG. Now Gen Z is of high interest. But what about the next cohorts that are showing up? Maybe Gen Alpha, what about Silvers?
So that is exactly what I would ask you not to do. Don't look for the next biggest cohort in a generalized way. Please look at it different for each business, different for each category, different at each point of time. The point is there are opportunities for you to look at cohorts in multiple ways at all points of time. Always look at the breakups to decide what is the one of interest to you. The general tendency is let's all go after, Gen Alpha. That's not what I would recommend. I would say what is relevant for your brand, your business at that point of time is what you should be looking at.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.